welcome to the Casa channel. Today we're going to be doing a how-to tutorial on how to reface cabinetry from start to finish. Hopefully you all are going to enjoy it. Let's jump right on into it because we have a lot of demo going on in the background. So if you're familiar with our vlogs, you'll know that right now we're taking down the walls and the door walls. So there's a lot of construction going on, so I want to get this shot in before the noise begins. We're actually going to label these in numerical order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Some way that you can remember it, whether you do top, 1 through 10, or 1 through 9 with the top cupboards, and then write 1 through 9 with the lower cupboards, or just continuously. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., until we run out. We have 32 cupboards in total, minus the 3, meaning we'll hit about 29 with our numbering system. Let's get to removing the hardware, because the first thing that we're going to want to do is remove all the hardware. It's actually easier to remove the hardware and all that kind of stuff while the doors are on, because you have somebody kind of press up against to get some leverage. And what you want to do then is, once all the hardware is done, you want to clean them with TSP. TSP is going to take off all the dirt and grime, especially in a kitchen. If you've ever fried food or the previous owners have fried food, the stuff goes airborne and it lands on those cupboards and those surfaces, and you'll feel a kind of a tacky texture, especially above here. This is where you need the most TSP action, because this is where you're going to really have that dirt and grime that you need to get off, because that oiliness is going to prevent the paint from adhering properly. And the number one reason why you have paints and chips on your cupboards is because the paint does not adhere properly to the surface. So we're going to prepare all the cupboards, and we'll get back with you when that's all finished. Now when you dip your sponge in, you want to make sure that you wring it out real nice so you don't get a lot of drips. You just need it to be damp. You don't need it to be sopping wet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the sponge and we're going to work up. So we're going to work up first. That makes sure that any of these drips drip down, instead of down this way where they would gather and then drop below. And then once you've got a good amount of TSP on the board, you just want to work in a circular motion to keep all of that solution kind of in suspension so that it's not getting too much and dripping, because if it drips, then your surface down here is going to have TSP on it, and that's not good. So the TSP is done. That was a relatively fast process, but it was just a pain because you constantly have to watch where it's dripping, if it's dripping, where it's dripping, and so it's really nasty stuff to work with, so I'm glad it's done. That's kind of the least fun part, actually, because that's kind of just you don't really see the difference until you see the difference in the bucket, because the bucket was like black. And that's all that grunge and grime and cooking grease and all that kind of stuff that goes airborne. But the thing is that you don't really see any progress because it's still the same color, and you don't really feel like you went anywhere even though you worked for an hour and a half. So now the real progress starts. We're going to take a fine pad. We're using these. They're a foam-backed sandpaper made by Web Abrasive, and they are really nice. You can go with any type of sandpaper you want though, but basically all we want to do is we're gonna take the cabinets down. So let me take one down and I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so we got one of the cabinet faces off, and all we're going to do is we're going to sand in the same direction that the grain goes. You don't want to go against the grain. That's going to ruin your nice grain here, and if you want to put a varnish back on, that's going to really ruin things up. Now, in our case, we're painting them white, so it really doesn't matter, but still, general practice is to sand with the grain. And all you want to do, you don't need to sand these into oblivion. See, you got that right there? That varnish, you just want to take off that veneer, that sheen. So that sheen is that little top coat that you want to get off, because once you've roughed this up, the primer can adhere to this, and then the paint can adhere to the primer. Alright, so the very last thing you want to do is you want to take a damp rag or sponge and wipe down the cupboards. We are at the stage in which we are starting to put down our primer. Now you want to make sure that if you're using an oil-based primer, you use a brush that is supposed to be used with oil-based paints. If you remember, we actually labeled all of our cabinetry with a number that corresponds to where they belong in the cabinets. So what you want to do is you want to take, because you're obviously painting over your numbers, you want to take just some masking tape and write in your number on there. As you can see, we have our number 1 there, and then we paint it. And we're actually going to put these up on some solo cups where you can bring it in like a pizza, set it down like this, bring your hand in between and set it on the solo cups so you're not getting paint in your hands or the ground, and they're suspended so they get really good airflow. Alright, so we are done priming all of the cabinet faces. We're just working now on basically the framing of the cabinetry, and it's going to look really great when it's all done. Right now it kind of still looks like it's unfinished, but that's kind of how it looks when you're priming it. Don't worry, you don't need a thick coat. That's the thing, is the thicker the coat, the longer it takes to dry. And basically, your primer is essentially just working as a paint adhesive to whatever surface you're looking to paint. So it does not need to be thick at all. And in fact, the thicker you make it, the more work you're going to be doing, the more money you're going to be spending, and the longer it's going to take to dry. So right now, we're letting these dry for about 48 hours, 4 to 8 hours. And basically, that means overnight. So we'll get them in the morning, and then we'll flip them over. The back portion here is actually completely primed, front and back. The portion here is just primed on the front and sides. So we'll come through tomorrow and we can actually start putting down the finishing coat. So we'll see you in the morning when we start putting down the finishing coat. All right, so we are ready to start putting on the final coat here. Now this is going to be a 2-part process because you're going to put on a first coat, and then you're going to want to go back and sand down any bubbles or ridges that form, and then put a second coat on. So the final coat's going down in 2 layers here. So we just have the first layer of primer on. Only just do 1 layer because, like we talked about, the primer is just the adhesive to the material that you're painting. So you don't need 2 coats of that on. It's not supposed to cover up anything. It's just there to stick the paint to the surface. So what we want to do, to make your life a lot easier, is you want to get some paint cans or some type of thing to raise up your cupboards, because this again is going to allow you to come in here when they're all done and move them around, you know, so that you can get clearance here. Now what we've done is just taken a rag here, because once you start painting, you don't want this bare metal of the rims, because it's going to mar up the surface and you're going to get scratches and stuff. So by having this little bit of padding here, you can have this here elevated real nice up on paint cans without ruining any surface. Now I do want to go through the paint that we're using, because that's going to be a very, very important step for you if you want professional results. And that is going to be, this is, well, it's dripped on, but it's Pratt & Lambert. It's a semi-gloss. This is a latex paint. This is our finish. This is what's going on top. This has self-leveling technology in it, so if there's any little bevels or little ridges or anything like that, imperfections, the paint is actually going to fill that in, which is real nice. And I guess I don't need this on. I was using this when I was sanding. But you want to use that because it's going to give you professional results. If you just go to Lowe's, you know, nothing against Lowe's paint for walls and stuff, but if you're doing something that should look professional, you got to have professional paint. It's going to run you about $43 a gallon. Seems a little expensive, but it goes a long way. Now the next thing that I did want to go through that I realized when I was looking through the past footage that I forgot was the primer. Now the primer is again a Pratt & Lambert. It's an oil-based primer because we are putting our primer onto a surface that has already been painted before with a lacquer. So it's just going to adhere a little better to it. And so that's going to run you about $43 a gallon as well. Now, if you can find a half gallon of it, we could not buy a half gallon. A half gallon would have been perfect because we only use a half gallon of it to do all of the priming, because a little bit goes a very, very, very long way. With this little design here, you want to use a paintbrush to get in there first. We're going to just put some paint in there to get that all coated up first. And now we're gonna roll it on. The roller we're using is a super fine nap micro roller. You normally see big rollers like this. This is for super fine jobs. It is a micro roller, and it has extra fine nap on it. This fine nap is going to make sure that you don't have any like bubbling or things like that. And before you, I've been putting on some top coats already, but before you start putting on your top coat, you want to take a piece of just blue tape, masking tape like this, and you want to make a lint, like a little micro lint roller. Stick it around your fingers there, and you can run this along the brand new roller, and it takes off any little hairs and fibers that were on there that would get stuck in the paint, because your goal is to make it as minimal texture as possible. All right, so as you can see, we are starting to hang some of the covers. Now, I warn you, this is absolutely a two-person job. Taking them down was almost a two-person job, but putting them up is no doubt a two-person job. So grab a friend, grab a spouse, special, significant other, whoever, to hold the door for you, because it's going to be mandatory. Now, what you want to do is you want to start putting on the hardware. This is the most exciting part. Well, what we found is that you do not want to go, this is the front face of the door. You don't want to go in through this way, because as you painted, sometimes paint will have kind of overlapped the hole, making it slightly smaller than it should be. So by putting it in the front here, it's going to prevent anything from tearing out and ripping. And so there we go. That actually wasn't that bad, but you want to put it in the front first to kind of clear out any paint, and then you can put it through the back here. And I typically will go as tight as it's possible without stripping the screw, just because there's nothing worse than having to go back and re-tighten later. All right, so now it's time to put the hinges on. We want to flip it over here, and you'll see here, this got covered up by paint, but you'll see these three holes over here. They are from the old hardware. We got new hardware, and so what you want to do is, you'll notice, see, they don't line up at all, which is almost inevitable. You're gonna have to drill new holes. So what we do is we line up the very best we can, hold it where you want it, and then in the very center, take a Sharpie to mark your holes. All right, so we are hanging the cabinet door here. And we've already pre-drilled our holes. They're pretty much the exact same holes as before. But just do the bottom first, then we'll.
I know, but I want to get it as level as possible. Okay. Hold on.
Here, I'll show them. So we actually have this is a laser level. This will be a lifesaver, because if it's not level, it will actually turn off the laser itself.
Put it under the edge.
So we've been using this to check the level here, which I think we're a little bit off.
Slides around the edge right there, right? Till now there.
Almost. That's perfect. Okay. And again, the thing you'll learn is that perfection can be achieved, but no one will notice it except for you. So there you go. There is start to finish cabinet refacing. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed the journey that was a long one. And with a little help from the pros, Port Huron Paint, I appreciate your insight and wisdom, and all the other companies that helped as well, and my dad. So thank you so much, and we'll catch y'all later. And as always, remember, mi casa es su casa.